Hello and welcome to Cask Theology, a channel about theology and beer. Today we're looking at another one of the theisms, and today we're looking at Pantheism. Now, as always, we're going to have a quick look at its name, then we'll have a look at the definition of Pantheism, and then we'll look at some examples of it. So, without further ado, let's go grab our drinks and explore Pantheism. As always, let's examine the name itself. Now, watchers of previous episodes in this series will be completely unsurprised to discover that it's derived from ancient Greek, and it comes from two different words. Theos, which means God, as we've discussed before, and pan, a word which means all or everything. So, when you clump those together, the word pretty much means everything God or all God. So, as the word describes, pantheism is the idea that everything that exists is part of God, or that creation and God are one and the same thing, with all the implications that follow on from that idea. In pantheism, the deity that is everything isn't a personal god, such as the beings that you'll find in, say, your ancient Roman or Greek gods, or with their own likes and dislikes and squabbles, or the singular god of monotheism, who's often described as a person in their own right, but rather it's more of a force of nature or a concept that nature itself is divine and should be revered. Pantheism is a concept which is quite close to another concept called monism, which is another Greek word which means all is one, which in brief describes a reality where everything is just one thing. But pantheism, of course, states that this one thing is God. Both pantheism and monism have been around for many centuries, and while they haven't been the driving force behind many religions, the idea has been at least part of their theologies. It's only really been in the last few centuries, in the Western world at least, that pantheism gained more of a definition. So in pantheism, everything that exists is either part of God somehow, or derived from God. So for instance, the thing that makes trees and animals alive is that they have the essence of God flowing through them. Now, with this in mind, it's probably best to dive into a couple of examples of where it can be found. Now, as with all things philosophical, the ancient Greeks get a mention, specifically the school of thought followed by the Stoics, who were pantheistic. Hinduism, with its wide range of concepts, is of course a place it can be found, alongside other types of theism, such as polytheism and monotheism. Nowadays, there are two that I found online, and that's the World Pantheist Movement and the Universal Pantheist Society, which, as always, I'll stick links in the description for if you want to have a look. Now, it's worth a mention that some monotheistic religions, such as Christianity, could be kind of seen as pantheistic, as the notion that God is everywhere and flows through everything and sustains creation, but most denominations will assert that God is not part of creation itself, but is distinct from it. This was an issue that the early church faced with a group known as the Gnostics, which is something I'll go into further detail in my church history series later this year. This idea of God being separate is also seen in Christianity's parent religion, Judaism, and it can also be found in Islam. The general idea, of course, is that the universe needs God to exist, but that God exists separately from time, space and creation. So, quite often, pantheistic views are discouraged or outright rejected. So that about wraps it up for this brief look into pantheism, the idea that everything is God. As always, there are links in the description if you want to learn a bit more. Feel free to subscribe for more theology and beer content, and in the next episode I'm going to be taking a look at atheism. So, as always, until then, grab a drink and keep asking questions.